Hey friends, this is Dolony TV. Glad to have you aboard here on a Sunday edition. It's taken me dang long enough to get something up on this fine Sunday. It's past dinner time and we're all ready to rock and roll. The barbecues are shut off, the smokers are shut off, and it is time to talk hockey on a Sunday night as we approach Monday morning. Obviously, big weekend for the Edmonton Oilers. We've talked about coaching staffs. We've talked about pretty much everything there is to talk about with the Oilers, except for truly the goaltending situation. So that's what we'll address today. If you are new to the channel, friends, consider hitting that subscribe button here on Dolany TV. I know it's been a rocky year, but you can already see based on the off-season content since the Oilers were bounced in 6 against the Panthers, we might be a little bit back on the rebound. So let's see what happens. As we go over to today's news, he got to it before a minute of time elapsed in the video, which is always good. John Gibson, once again, heavily rumored here over the past 48 hours to be, well, willing to go to Edmonton. Of course, this was subject to a lot of discussion last trade deadline here in 2025 when John Gibson kind of said maybe not to the old trade idea because he didn't want to play alongside Stuart Skinner, knowing how much the Edmonton Oilers favor young Stuart Skinner simply because he's a homegrown goalie in the system. He's a local guy, whatever you want, whatever excuse you want to use for the Oilers favoring Stuart Skinner in net. Well, he also wins you hockey games whether you like it or not. So yeah, that's where we've got it for the Oilers is John Gibson wasn't willing to come here and play second fiddle to Mr. Stuart Skinner. Obviously, Gibson himself has a whole ton of issues. Injuries have been prevalent for the past 2-3 years now, even maybe reaching back 4. Secondarily, that he came off his best season in a while this year, where the past 4 or 5 have been pretty mediocre. In fact, pretty much everything since the Ducks, Ryan Getzlaf, when he was still a very effective player for him, has been very mediocre for, of course, the Anaheim Ducks from John Gibson. So now all of a sudden you have him coming off a career year in a sense, a rebound year, whatever, something that got him back on track. He's still in his early 30s here for the Anaheim Ducks, and obviously only 1 year left on his deal, I believe. That was kind of the hang-up, was the fact that he would still have this year on the contract. So for the Oilers, now all of a sudden, if you are wheeling and dealing, and as Stan Bowman said, the defense, it'll remain pretty much largely untouched. But what will get changed is the forward group, and the goaltending will get addressed this year. Whether anything actually happens, that's hoping for a miracle. But what we would understand is John Gibson, even if he's willing to or not willing to, as you see here in the slide, that David Pagnotta noting that John Gibson would be willing to accept a trade to the Oilers now. I think it's clear the Oilers have a decision to make on Stuart Skinner and Cal Pickard as a tandem and as separate players. So, John Gibson maybe eyeing some opportunity to go in there and for a team that couldn't quite pull out the victory for the goaltending, as it was the last 2 years in the playoffs. Now John Gibson may be eyeing up the opportunity to try and come in and win a cup for the Edmonton Oilers, knowing that John Gibson, again, it's not like he's ever been an absolutely terrible goaltender. I think you'd take John Gibson's numbers over Stuart Skinner all day. And to anyone that sat here and clowned me all season talking about John Gibson wouldn't be an upgrade, I'll tell you, John Gibson's numbers in the regular season, if those translated over to the playoffs here for the Oilers, guess what? You would have won the Stanley Cups. So just saying, it's tough cookies now to talk about. But it is very unfortunate look that the Oilers fans that tune into this channel that hate John Gibson never gave him time of day in the regular season to be a solution, standing by Stuart Skinner and getting the ultimate reward of being bounced by the Florida Panthers 2 years in a row. So not necessarily making fun of you for that, but just simply saying the amount of people that utterly hated John Gibson and the idea of trading for him this year in favor of keeping Stu and Pickard together. I'm glad you got your taste of what it looks like, because I think we all knew that it wasn't good enough alone to win a Stanley Cup. It was going to take a lot out of the team, and obviously Zach Hyman breaking a hand or wrist or whatever. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins broken hand, broken toe for Connor Brown. Matthias Ekholm being as broken as he was all year. And then ultimately as well, you got a situation where the goaltending was just crap terrible. Well, that leads to a loss against the Florida Panthers. And at least if you could have solved one of those factors in terms of the goaltending, not saying that John Gibson would have been any better, but it would have been different. That That's literally my only argument, is it quite simply would have been different to have John Gibson back there rather than those two back there, which, again, they did fantastic things. They got us to Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final. I'm not trying to downplay their contributions, but it just wasn't enough. And the Oilers, they took a gamble on running it back after knowing last year it just wasn't enough. And, it turned out the same way again. So now you got to address it. And John Gibson, as much as some might hate him, he is not the worst option you could possibly choose from. The fact that some people would prefer Jake Allen over John Gibson absolutely boggles my mind, because you're talking about Jake Allen, who's just been a ho-hum, not a terrible starter, but also what literally has he won at all at any stage of his career in this NHL game we call hockey? So just saying. So that's where I'd say John Gibson, at least, he does have a defeat of the Edmonton Oilers on his record in the playoffs. He is a good goaltender at an elite level. And he you know what? He goes out there and wins. So that's what you're hoping for. You want a good guy that can backstop you, steal games, and we've seen John Gibson do that against the Oilers time and time again. So what I would like to see is a little bit of that. Now, that said, John Gibson does come with the injury front, and that's the other side, is you have to decide how you're going to do it. Obviously, getting rid of Calvin Pickard doesn't solve the cap problems, doesn't solve the goaltending configuration. You're likely, if you go acquire John Gibson, giving Stuart Skinner to the Anaheim Ducks in return, hopefully getting some half retention and, making the salary cap picture look that much better. But it really is tricky, because I'll say this to the effect of acquiring John Gibson. John Gibson is probably open to a trade to the Oilers, knowing that the Oilers are done relying on Stuart Skinner. I think it's been made clear to the Oilers, clear to the fans, that Stuart Skinner just is not going to be the guy to get them over the hump in the playoffs. And obviously, as well, if you want to blame goaltending for where we finished in the regular season, fair enough. It's a tough look for a guy that came in as a high hope prospect, had some good time, and has just progressively gotten worse as his career in Edmonton has gone along. And that's not to say he's a great guy. Like, Stuart Skinner is absolutely an amazing young gentleman, and obviously is going to do lots of great things with his life and his NHL career. Unfortunately, similar to likely a Devin Dubnyk, he is going to do it elsewhere across the NHL. So you'll see what happens here. But ultimately, it would be a trade to the Anaheim Ducks really is the only way that John Gibson becomes a member of the Oilers. Stuart Skinner going the other way, and ultimately as well some other, whether it be draft capital or some, prospects going the other way to Anaheim. I don't know how highly motivated Anaheim is to get rid of John Gibson. Again, another year of a solid elite style goaltender at his age behind Lucas Dostal wouldn't be the worst addition for the Anaheim Ducks, who are looking to take that next step this year as well. And they very well might be one of those active teams in free agency and at the draft this year. So we'll see what happens. But obviously, knowing that, again, John Gibson would be willing to accept a trade to the Oilers. That's the key. He'd be willing. Now, the problem is both teams have to make it work from here on out, and that is the difficult part for the Oilers. The salary cap picture is complicated to begin with, and then secondarily as well, you're trying to navigate Connor McDavid's extension and Evan Bouchard's extension at the same time while trying to reconfigure the goaltending and the forward group all in the same. It's going to be a messy, beautiful summer here. I leave for holidays on Wednesday. I should be around home until Friday. And then, I'm out of touch for the next about week and a half after that. So we're going to miss a whole heck of a lot of stuff here over the next 2 weeks in Oilers land. But I'm going to tell you, it's going to be a fun time seeing what the Oilers can pull off as we get through the first week of July and into the rest of the summer. Friends, thanks so much for being aboard again. I don't even have to ask you to comment. I just mentioned John Gibson, and it's going to go to hell in a handbasket in the comments section right quick. So appreciate that, and we'll chat soon here as we get things lined up for another week of Edmonton Oilers hockey in the off-season edition here on Dollar TV. For right now, I'm up on out of here.